The worst kind of betrayal is not the one that happens in the dark. It is the one that waits under your wedding photo and smiles because it thinks you will never look back. Ethan Caldwell came home early on a Thursday night with white roses in one hand and a cream envelope in the other, feeling foolishly hopeful for the first time in months. His meeting in Manhattan had ended 2 hours ahead of schedule, the rain over Greenwich had softened into mist, and the weekend reservation in Aspen was folded neatly inside the envelope like a second chance he had already paid for. He had not told Lauren. That was the point. After 12 years of marriage, 3 quiet months of sleeping back to back, and too many dinners where she smiled at her phone more than at him, Ethan wanted to surprise his wife, not with another diamond bracelet or charity table, but with time. Just time. The Caldwell house stood at the end of a long stone driveway, all warm windows, trimmed hedges, and the kind of silence expensive homes learn to hold. Ethan stepped into the front hall, shaking rain from his coat. The white roses brushed against the sleeve of his charcoal suit. On the wall ahead, their wedding portrait hung beneath a brass picture light. Lauren in lace, Ethan in black tie. Both of them young enough to believe love could not become a locked room. Then the security hub beside the staircase blinked blue. Motion detected. Hallway camera. 11:42 p.m. Ethan frowned. It was normal for the system to record deliveries, staff movement, even Lauren crossing the hall late at night. But this alert had been flagged by the new sensitivity setting he had asked the installer to add after a package disappeared from the porch. He almost ignored it. Almost. His thumb touched the screen. The footage opened in grainy color, clear enough to show the hallway from the night before. At first, nothing moved except the soft glow from the chandelier. Then Lauren stepped into frame wearing a pale sweater, her blonde hair pulled over one shoulder. She looked calm. Too calm. A second later, Ryan Mercer appeared beside her. Ethan's best friend. His college roommate. His financial advisor. The man Ethan had called brother in more speeches than he could count. Ryan stood under the wedding portrait as if he belonged there. Lauren glanced toward the stairs, then lowered her voice. The audio was thin but sharp in the quiet hall. "He trusts you more than anyone," she said. "That is why it will work." Ethan stopped breathing for one full second. Ryan gave a small laugh, not loud, not cruel, almost casual. "Once he signs the restructuring papers, Caldwell Development is ours. You file after the transfer settles. He will be too busy saving face to fight." The roses slipped lower in Ethan's hand. One white petal fell, then another, landing on the dark hardwood like pieces of a promise no one had kept. Lauren looked up at the wedding photo, at the frozen version of herself standing beside Ethan in a church filled with flowers. "And the house?" she asked. Ryan smiled. "He will leave it to you if he thinks he failed you." Ethan stared at the screen while the cream envelope bent slowly in his fist. Aspen. Fireplace. Mountain air. A plan to save a marriage that, apparently, had already been turned into paperwork. On the video, Lauren touched Ryan's arm lightly, not with passion but with strategy. That hurt worse. This was not a mistake made in loneliness. This was a plan measured in signatures, shares, and timing. Ethan looked down at the roses scattered across the floor. He wanted to storm upstairs. He wanted to demand answers. He wanted to hear Lauren say it was not what it looked like, and Ryan say some polished lie that friendship could survive. But then his eyes moved to the watch on his wrist, the old steel watch his father had worn for 30 years as a carpenter. The back was scratched from job sites and winters in Ohio, but the engraving still held. Measure twice. Cut once. Ethan's jaw tightened. Slowly, carefully, he set the roses on the entry table. He saved the video. Then he saved a second copy. Then a third. Outside, thunder rolled over the trees low and far away. Inside, the house remained beautiful, still and false. Ethan placed the aspen envelope beside the flowers, turned off the screen, and whispered into the empty hallway. "Not tonight." Ethan Caldwell had not been born into rooms like the one he was standing in now. Long before the stone driveway, the heated floors, and the wedding portrait under the brass light, he had grown up in a 2-bedroom house outside Columbus, Ohio, where winter came through the windows no matter how much plastic his father taped over the frames. His father, Thomas Caldwell, was a carpenter with square hands, quiet eyes, and a rule for everything that mattered. Measure twice. Cut once. He said it when building stairs, when balancing a checkbook, when choosing who to trust. Ethan heard it so often as a boy that he used to roll his eyes. Later, after his father passed and left him nothing but the old steel watch and a toolbox that smelled like sawdust, those words became the closest thing Ethan had to a map. He started Caldwell Development with one used pickup truck, $8,000 in savings, and an office in Stamford that measured barely 800 square feet. The carpet was thin. The heat rattled. The conference table was a folding table from a hardware store. Ethan slept on the sofa more nights than he went home, not because he loved money, but because he loved making empty lots turn into places where families could begin again. Ryan Mercer was there in the early days, not as a partner at first, but as a friend who needed saving. They had met at the University of Michigan, two ambitious white kids with cheap meal plans and big plans scribbled on legal pads. Ryan was sharper with numbers, louder in bars, better at convincing strangers he had already won. Ethan liked that about him. Or maybe Ethan liked feeling useful to someone so confident. Years later, when Ryan's first investment firm collapsed and left him with lawsuits, debt, and a reputation no bank wanted near, Ethan brought him into Caldwell Development. Temporary, Ryan had said, ashamed for once. Ethan had clapped him on the shoulder. Family is not temporary. That was the kind of man Ethan had been. He believed loyalty once given should not be counted like a bill. Lauren came into his life at a charity auction for affordable housing in New Haven. She wore a soft ivory dress, spoke gently to donors, and asked Ethan why a millionaire developer still cared about starter homes when luxury condos made twice the profit. He remembered his answer because she had looked at him like it mattered. "Because my mother cried the day we got a house with a roof that did not leak," he told her. Lauren touched his arm and said, "Then you are not just building houses. You are giving people dignity." That sentence stayed with him. So did she. Their first year together felt like light through open curtains. Lauren remembered his father's birthday. She sent flowers to his mother. She laughed at his habit of checking locks twice before bed. When Ethan proposed, he used his father's watch instead of a speech, setting it on the table between them and saying, "I want to measure the rest of my life with you." Lauren cried. Ryan gave the toast at their wedding and called Ethan the brother he chose. Everyone believed it. Ethan most of all. Success came fast after that. Caldwell Development expanded from Connecticut to New York, then New Jersey, then Massachusetts. The house in Greenwich came next, a place Lauren said would finally make them feel settled. But wealth has a way of adding rooms people can hide inside. Lauren began speaking more about image, less about purpose. She wanted bigger galas, cleaner magazine profiles, a different circle of friends. Ryan was always available to help. He redesigned the family office structure. He reviewed private accounts. He took late calls from Lauren when Ethan was traveling. Ethan noticed, then dismissed the noticing as insecurity. After all, Ryan was his best friend. Lauren was his wife. Suspicion felt like an insult to the two people he had trusted most. Still, the house changed by inches. Dinners became performances. Lauren's smile became something she put on before guests arrived and took off when they left. Ryan stopped knocking before entering Ethan's office. The restructuring papers appeared 3 weeks before the hallway video, presented as protection from market volatility. Ryan explained them over coffee, smooth as polished marble. Lauren sat beside Ethan, her hand over his, saying, "This is just to protect us." Ethan almost signed that day. Then his mother, Margaret, called from Ohio and asked one simple question after hearing Ryan's name. "Does the person asking you to sign benefit if you stop reading?" Ethan laughed it off then. Standing in the hallway now, with white rose petals scattered beneath his wedding photo, he was no longer laughing. He looked at the frozen security screen, at Lauren and Ryan caught under the life he had built for them, and finally understood his father had not been teaching him carpentry. He had been teaching him survival. The morning after Ethan found the hallway footage, the Caldwell house looked exactly the same, and that was what made it feel unreal. Sunlight moved across the white oak floors. The coffee machine hummed in the kitchen. A landscaper trimmed the hedges beyond the glass doors, unaware that the home behind him had become a stage set after the actors forgot their lines. Ethan stood at the island in a gray sweater and dark jeans, his father's watch resting heavy on his wrist. The white roses were gone from the entry table. He had gathered them before dawn and placed them in the trash outside. Not because he hated them, but because he could not stand watching something beautiful die slowly in a vase. The aspen envelope remained in his office drawer, bent at one corner from the moment his hand closed around it. Lauren came downstairs at 8:15 wearing cream lounge pants and a cashmere cardigan, her blonde hair perfectly loose, her face soft with the kind of calm that used to make Ethan feel at home. She kissed his cheek lightly, the way she always did when staff might be nearby. "You got in late," she said. Ethan poured coffee into 2 mugs. "Meeting ended early. You should have called." Her voice was gentle, almost wounded. Once that would have worked on him. Once, he would have apologized for surprising his own wife in his own house. He handed her the mug. "I did not want to wake you." Lauren smiled and looked away too quickly. On the counter beside her sat the restructuring papers in a leather folder Ryan had delivered 2 days earlier. Ethan let his eyes rest on it just long enough for her to notice. "Ryan thinks we should sign before the weekend," she said, casual as sunlight. "Markets are moving fast. He says waiting could expose us." "Ryan says a lot." Lauren's fingers tightened around the mug. "Only slightly." Ethan saw it because now he was measuring everything twice. "You trust him," she said. "More than anyone." The phrase landed in the room like a fingerprint left at the scene. Ethan lifted his coffee and took one slow sip. "I used to." Lauren's eyes rose to his. For a breath the mask shifted. Then she laughed softly. "That sounds dramatic. Maybe I am tired. You have been working too much." She stepped closer and touched his sleeve. "That is why this restructuring matters. Less stress. More protection. More time for us." A small word, polished until it reflected nothing. Ethan looked past her into the hallway, where their wedding portrait watched over the staircase. In the photo, Lauren's smile was bright, Ryan's toast had made everyone laugh, and Ethan's mother had cried quietly in the front row. He wondered how many lies begin as ordinary pictures. At 10:30, Ryan arrived at Caldwell Development's Manhattan office carrying a navy garment bag, and a grin Ethan had trusted for nearly 20 years. "There he is," Ryan said, walking in without knocking. "The man of the hour. Ready to secure the kingdom." Ethan looked up from his desk. Behind Ryan, downtown traffic moved 50 stories below, tiny yellow taxis threading between glass towers. On the desk lay 3 copies of the restructuring agreement, a silver pen, and Ethan's old leather notebook from the company's first year. Ryan dropped into the chair across from him like a brother, not a consultant. "Lauren is nervous," he said. "She thinks you are overthinking." "And you?" Ryan smiled. "I think overthinking built this company, but hesitation can lose it." Ethan studied him. Same confident posture. Same expensive watch Ethan had given him after their first $100 million project. Same easy eyes that had looked straight into a hallway camera and planned to hollow out his life. "How many years have we known each other?" Ethan asked. Ryan blinked then laughed. "Since Michigan." "Why?" "Just thinking." "About?" Ethan closed the folder. "Who was there when I had nothing?" Ryan leaned back, pleased by the sentiment he thought was coming. "I was, brother." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, you were." He let the silence stretch 1 second too long. Ryan's smile thinned. "Everything okay?" Ethan stood and walked to the window, giving himself the city instead of Ryan's face. If he turned too fast, if he spoke too sharply, he might waste the advantage grief had handed him. So he breathed. He measured. He cut nothing yet. "Let us move the signing," Ethan said. "Tomorrow. Boardroom. Full legal present." Ryan's expression tightened, then smoothed. "That seems unnecessary. For something this important it feels right." Ryan rose, buttoning his jacket. "Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable." "Comfortable." Ethan almost smiled. That night, he sat alone in his home office and opened the security system again. He expected 1 video. He found 12. Ethan did not move for almost a minute. 12 clips sat in the security archive, each one marked by the same blue hallway icon, each one recorded late at night while he had been in Manhattan, Boston, or asleep behind the closed door of the primary bedroom he and Lauren barely shared anymore. The first video had shown enough to break his heart. The others showed enough to save his life. He opened the oldest clip, dated 3 months earlier. The hallway appeared empty at first, washed in soft light from the chandelier. Then Ryan entered wearing a dark coat, moving with the confidence of a man who knew the alarm code. He paused outside Ethan's office, glanced toward the stairs and typed into the keypad. The door opened. Ethan's hand tightened around the mouse. Ryan stepped inside. The boardroom on the 52nd floor of Caldwell Development had been designed to make difficult decisions look clean. Glass walls opened to a wide view of Manhattan, where morning traffic moved below in thin silver lines. The table was black walnut, long enough to seat 20, polished so perfectly it reflected the ceiling lights like still water. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early and stood at the head of it with his briefcase closed, his father's watch visible beneath his cuff. Julia Bennett sat to his right, calm in a dark suit, a yellow legal pad in front of her and no expression wasted. Across from her were 2 forensic accountants from a New York firm, both quiet, both already connected to the secure evidence folder. One by one, the board members entered, carrying coffee, tablets, and the unease that comes when a routine meeting has too many attorneys in the room. Ryan arrived last before Lauren. He wore a navy suit, a pale blue tie, and the confident smile of a man walking into a room he believed he had arranged. "Full house," he said, clapping Ethan lightly on the shoulder. Ethan did not step away, but he did not lean into the touch either. "Important day," he said. Ryan's eyes flicked to Julia, then to the accountants. "I thought this was a signature review." "It is." Lauren entered at 9 exactly, dressed in a white wool dress and camel coat, her hair smooth, her face composed into careful concern. She crossed to Ethan and touched his arm. "Are you sure you want so many people involved? This is family." Ethan looked at her hand, then at her face. "That is what I thought." The words were soft enough that only she heard them. Her fingers slipped away. When everyone sat, Ryan opened the leather folder and distributed the restructuring papers with the easy authority Ethan had given him for years. "This agreement positions Caldwell Development for long-term resilience," Ryan began. "It protects family assets, streamlines voting rights, and reduces exposure during market volatility." His voice moved smoothly over phrases designed to lull smart people into approving what tired people did not have time to question. Lauren sat beside him, eyes lowered, playing the worried wife who only wanted stability. Ethan watched them both and felt something inside him settle into place. Not peace, precision. Ryan slid the final signature page toward him. The silver pen rested on top, perfectly aligned. "Once you sign," Ryan said, "we can file before close of business." Ethan picked up the pen. Lauren's breath caught so quietly he would have missed it 2 days ago. Ryan leaned back, almost smiling. Ethan held the pen over the signature line, then stopped. "Before I sign anything," he said, "there is something from my hallway everyone should see." The room changed without moving. Ryan's smile stayed on his face, but it no longer belonged there. Lauren looked at Ethan as if he had spoken in a language she did not know. Julia reached for the remote and turned on the wall screen. The first image appeared. The Caldwell hallway, the wedding portrait, the brass light, Lauren and Ryan standing beneath it at 11:42 p.m. No one spoke. The audio filled the boardroom, thin but clear. "He trusts you more than anyone. That is why it will work." A board member slowly lowered his coffee cup. Ryan straightened. "Ethan, that is taken out of context." Ethan did not answer. The video continued. "Once he signs the restructuring papers, Caldwell Development is ours." Lauren's face went pale, then flushed. "You recorded private conversations in our home?" she said. Julia's voice was calm. "The security system was installed with household notice and signage. This meeting concerns corporate fraud, not marital privacy." Ryan stood halfway. "This is ridiculous. We were discussing asset protection." Julia clicked again. The next clip showed Ryan entering Ethan's office using the alarm code. Then another showed him holding the steel watch, turning it over, studying the engraved numbers. Ethan felt the room look at his wrist. His father's words seemed to pulse against his skin. "Measure twice. Cut once." One accountant placed printed access logs on the table. The other added safe records, file downloads, and edits to the restructuring draft. Page after page, date after date. Not emotion. Evidence. Ryan's voice lost its polish. I can explain. Ethan looked at the man he had rescued, trusted, and called family. Then start with why my father's safe code appears in your login history. Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. Lauren turned to him, panic cracking her perfect calm. Ryan. One word full of blame. Ethan almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But sympathy was not the same as surrender. He placed the silver pen back on the unsigned papers and pushed them away. You both planned my ending in my own hallway, he said. I am choosing mine in the open. For several seconds, the boardroom held the kind of silence that money usually buys but truth sometimes takes by force. Ryan remained half standing, one hand on the table, his navy tie slightly crooked now, his confidence leaking away in small visible pieces. Lauren sat beside him with both palms flat against her lap, staring at the screen as if the hallway footage had betrayed her personally. Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The videos had already spoken in a language no polished excuse could soften. Julia Bennett stood and placed a clean stack of documents beside the unsigned restructuring papers. For the record, she said, Mr. Caldwell has not signed this agreement. Based on the evidence reviewed this morning, we are recommending immediate suspension of Mr. Mercer's financial authority, revocation of his system access, and preservation of all related communications, drafts, transfer requests, and private account records. One of the older board members, William Foster, rubbed a hand over his mouth. He had known Ethan since the first Stamford office, since the days when Caldwell Development could barely afford real chairs. Ryan, he said quietly, tell me this is not what it looks like. Ryan gave a short laugh, too sharp to sound innocent. It looks like a misunderstanding because Ethan is emotional. His marriage is strained, and now he is dragging the company into it. Ethan watched Lauren flinch at the word marriage, not with guilt, but with irritation, as if Ryan had used the wrong strategy too soon. Julia clicked to the next file. The wall screen changed from the hallway video to a spreadsheet of access logs, wire requests, and draft revisions. This is not a marital argument, she said. This is an attempted transfer of voting influence using a document prepared by a conflicted advisor who appears to have accessed secured materials without authorization. Ryan's face hardened. Appears to. That is a dangerous word. So is fraud, Julia replied. No one moved. The accountants began walking the board through the timeline, voice by voice, date by date. 3 months earlier, Ryan had accessed Ethan's safe records using the secondary code from the watch engraving. 6 weeks later, a restructuring draft appeared with a clause that would shift emergency voting rights away from Ethan if Lauren filed a marital claim within 30 days of execution. 2 weeks after that, a shell fund connected to one of Ryan's former partners purchased options tied to Caldwell projects. Lauren stared at the table. I did not understand all of that, she said softly. The performance was elegant. Wounded. Almost believable. Ethan turned to her. You understood enough in the hallway. Her eyes lifted. For the first time there was no softness in them. Only frustration. You were never home, she said. You built buildings for strangers and expected me to be grateful for rooms I sat in alone. The words landed, and Ethan let them. There had been loneliness in their marriage. He would not lie about that just because she had lied about everything else. You could have left, he said. You could have asked for a divorce. You could have taken what was fair. Lauren's mouth trembled, but her voice sharpened. Fair? After 12 years of standing beside you, while everyone called you brilliant. Ethan looked at the wedding portrait frozen on the screen behind her, that younger version of himself smiling at a future he thought they shared. Standing beside me was not the same as building with me. Ryan stepped in quickly. This is exactly why the restructuring was necessary. Ethan cannot separate emotion from leadership. At the far end of the table, Margaret Caldwell's face appeared on the video call screen. She had been silent until then, wrapped in a gray cardigan in her Ohio kitchen, her silver hair pulled back, her eyes steady. My son has made mistakes, she said. Trusting you was one of them. Ryan's jaw tightened. Margaret looked at Ethan next, not with pity, but with the firm love that had raised him. Your father used to say a crooked board still looks straight if you never put a level on it. Ethan breathed once, slow and deep, Julia slid a resolution across the table. The board can vote now to suspend the signing, preserve evidence, and authorize a full independent audit. William Foster looked around the room. One by one, hands lifted. Not Ryan's. Not Lauren's. Everyone else. Ryan sank back into his chair. Lauren looked at Ethan as if she expected one private mercy, one last door left open because he had loved her. Ethan removed his wedding ring and placed it beside the unsigned papers. The sound was small against the walnut table. "I will handle the divorce with dignity," he said. "But the company, the employees, and my father's name are no longer part of your exit plan." Outside the glass walls, Manhattan kept moving, indifferent and bright. Inside, for the first time in months, Ethan felt the room belonged to the truth. The vote did not end the damage. It only stopped the bleeding long enough for everyone to see where the wound had been. By late afternoon, Ryan's access card had been disabled, his company laptop sealed for review, and his name removed from every active approval chain inside Caldwell Development. No one escorted him out with drama. No voices rose. That would have given him the satisfaction of looking like a man attacked by emotion instead of cornered by facts. He walked out of the boardroom under the quiet eyes of people who had once trusted his handshake. Lauren followed him into the private elevator lobby, then stopped when she realized he was not waiting for her. Ryan was on his phone, speaking fast to someone Ethan could not hear, his polished voice stripped down to urgency. Lauren touched his sleeve. "Ryan." He pulled away without looking at her. "Not now." 2 words. Small, cold, and complete. Ethan saw her face change. Not heartbreak. Recognition. She had mistaken a conspiracy for a future, and now the future was already protecting itself from her. Julia stood beside Ethan near the glass wall, gathering documents into a leather folder. "You should leave separately," she said. "I will have divorce counsel contact hers. Do not discuss settlement without attorneys present." Ethan nodded. His body felt tired in a delayed way, as if every hour of calm had borrowed strength from tomorrow. "And Ryan? The audit will decide how far this goes. But the access logs, draft changes, and shell fund connection are serious." She paused. "You did the right thing by waiting." Ethan looked toward the conference table where his wedding ring still sat beside the unsigned papers. It did not feel right. Julia's expression softened by less than an inch. Right rarely feels clean at first. When Ethan stepped into the hallway, Lauren was waiting near the framed photograph of Caldwell Development's first completed affordable housing project, a row of modest townhomes in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Ethan had kept that photograph outside the boardroom to remind himself where the company began. Lauren used to call it sweet. Later she called it off-brand. Now she stood beneath it like someone who had wandered into a museum of values she never planned to keep. "Can we talk at home?" she asked. Ethan slipped his hands into his pockets, his watch pressed against his wrist. No, the answer seemed to surprise them both with how peaceful it sounded. Lauren blinked. "After 12 years, I get no private conversation?" "You had private conversations in our hallway." Her lips parted then closed. "I was angry. I felt invisible." Ethan nodded once. "I believe that." For a moment her eyes searched his face, maybe looking for the door guilt used to open. "Then you understand why I wanted security." "I understand loneliness," he said. "I understand resentment. I understand wanting to be seen. I do not understand using my best friend, my father's watch code, and my company as leverage because you did not want to have an honest ending." Lauren looked away, and the city light caught the side of her face. She was still beautiful. That truth hurt in a useless way. Beauty had nothing to do with trust. "I did love you," she said. Ethan breathed slowly. Once, those words would have been enough to make him rewrite the whole day in softer ink. Now they sounded like a photograph from a house that had already burned down. "Maybe you loved who I was when you thought my loyalty meant I would never defend myself." Her eyes filled, but he could not tell whether it was sorrow, fear, or the shock of consequences arriving without negotiation. "What happens to me now?" she whispered. "You call your attorney," Ethan said. "You take what is fair. You leave what was never yours." The elevator doors opened behind her. For a second neither moved. Then Lauren stepped inside alone. As the doors closed, She looked at him like a woman finally seeing the boundary she had mistaken for weakness. Ethan stood there until the numbers descended. He did not feel triumphant. He felt emptied out but not broken. Back in the boardroom, Margaret's video call was still open on the screen. She had waited. Ethan walked toward the camera, and for the first time all day his control cracked. "Mom," he said quietly, "I almost signed it." Margaret's eyes glistened in her small Ohio kitchen. "But you did not." "Because of Dad's watch." She smiled sadly. "Because you remembered who gave it to you." Ethan looked down at the steel case, the scratches, the engraving worn by decades of work. Measure twice. Cut once. All his life he had thought the lesson was about caution. Now he understood it was also about courage. Not the loud kind. The kind that waits, verifies, and refuses to mistake love for permission to be used. That night, Ethan did not return to the Greenwich house. He checked into a quiet hotel near Bryant Park, placed the watch on the nightstand, and opened the Aspen envelope one last time. 2 tickets. 1 suite. A weekend meant to save a marriage that had already packed its own exit. He tore nothing. He simply folded the envelope back up and set it in the drawer. Some dreams did not need to be destroyed. They only needed to stop being mistaken for plans. Emma did not answer Liam that night. She left the ballroom with her sketchbook pressed against her chest, the city lights blurring through the cab window like wet paint. For 3 days she went back to her quiet routine. Coffee before dawn. Apron tied at the diner. Smiles served with pancakes and refills. But every time the bell above the door rang, her heart betrayed her and looked up first. Liam did not come, and somehow that hurt more than if he had. On the 4th evening, Jenny found a cream-colored envelope slipped under their apartment door. No logo, no expensive seal, just Emma's name written in familiar, careful handwriting. Inside was a single card and a subway pass. No pressure, no speech, just one line. "Please come see what I should have shown you from the beginning." Emma stood frozen in the hallway, her thumb brushing the edge of the card. "Do not go," her pride whispered. "Go," her heart answered. An hour later she stepped off the train near a small brick gallery in Soho. Not the kind of place that screamed money, but the kind that felt alive. Warm light spilled onto the sidewalk. Through the window she saw people moving slowly, quietly, as if they were not just looking at art, but listening to it. Then she saw the first frame. Her breath stopped. It was her sketch of the old man feeding pigeons in Bryant Park. The one from the back of her sketchbook. The one she had drawn on a lunch break and almost thrown away. Beside it hung the woman in the rain, the little boy with the paper crown, the tired waitress staring out a diner window at sunrise. Her drawings. Her world. Her truth. Emma pushed the door open with trembling hands. Inside, every wall carried a piece of her. Not polished into something false. Not changed to impress wealthy strangers. Preserved exactly as she had made it, pencil lines, smudges, and all. A small brass plaque near the entrance read, "These works belong to Emma Brooks, an artist who sees dignity where others look away." Emma covered her mouth. Liam stood near the back in a simple dark coat, not surrounded by cameras, not guarded by assistants. Just him, nervous, still, holding the old sketchbook she had once forgotten at his apartment. "I did not buy this to impress you," he said softly as she approached. "I rented the room for one night. The invitations went to people who fund community art programs, not society gossip pages. Every piece is still yours. Every decision after tonight is yours." Emma's eyes shone, but her voice stayed steady. "You should have trusted me with the truth." Liam nodded. "I know. I was afraid that if you saw the money first you would never see me. But instead I made you feel like I never saw you." That landed harder than any apology. Around them, strangers admired the drawings she had once hidden under diner receipts. A woman in a navy dress asked if the artist was present. Emma almost stepped back out of habit. Liam did not move for her. He only looked at her, waiting. The choice was hers. Emma took a breath, then walked forward. "I am the artist," she said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. The woman smiled and asked about the piece. Emma began to speak. First softly, then with warmth, then with the quiet confidence of someone finally standing inside her own name. Later, when the gallery had thinned and the candles were burning low, Emma found Liam by the window. "I am not saying everything is fixed," she told him. "I am saying this matters." Liam looked at her like he was afraid to hope too quickly. "What do you need from me?" Emma held his gaze. "No more half-truths. No more protecting me by deciding what I can handle. If I am in your life, I stand beside you, not behind a secret." Liam swallowed, then nodded. "You have my word." Emma looked back at the walls, at the proof of a dream she had nearly stopped believing in. For the first time since the gala, she let herself smile. Not because he was a millionaire. Not because the room was beautiful. But because tonight he had finally told the truth with action. The gallery closed after 10, but Emma did not want to leave. She walked slowly from wall to wall, touching nothing, studying everything, as if she needed to prove the night was real. Her drawings were still there. Her name was still there. And Liam was still beside the window, keeping enough distance to let her breathe. That was the first thing she noticed. He was not rushing her. He was not trying to turn forgiveness into a transaction. Near midnight, the gallery owner handed Emma a small folder. "3 collectors asked about purchasing prints," she said gently. "And a community arts director wants to speak with you about teaching a weekend class." Emma stared at the folder like it weighed 20 pounds. A week ago, she had been hiding sketches under diner receipts. Now strangers wanted to hang them in their homes. Her throat tightened. Liam watched her expression and smiled, but he did not say, "I told you so." He only said, "You earned that." Outside, the Soho streets glistened after a light rain. Emma pulled her coat tighter as they stood under the awning, the same cream-colored envelope folded in her pocket. A black car waited at the curb, but Liam glanced at the subway entrance down the block. "Your choice," he said. Emma looked at him, surprised. "Subway," she answered. "Then subway," he said without hesitation. They rode downtown shoulder to shoulder, not as a millionaire and a waitress, not as a secret and a mistake, but as two people who had finally stopped pretending. At her stop, Emma stepped onto the platform, then turned back. "Coffee tomorrow?" Liam asked, careful, hopeful. Emma smiled. "At the diner. 6:30. And you are paying full price." Liam laughed softly. "Fair." In the weeks that followed, the city did not magically become easy. Emma still worked morning shifts. Her shoes still hurt after 8 hours. Rent still came due on the 1st of the month. But something had changed. Every Sunday afternoon, she taught a sketch class at the community center, showing students how to find beauty in subway riders, fire escapes, tired hands, and ordinary faces. Liam came sometimes, sitting in the back with coffee in a paper cup, listening more than speaking. When reporters asked about his new public arts fund, he did not use Emma as a story. He said the fund existed because talent should not need a wealthy last name to be seen. And when he looked at Emma from across the room, she knew he meant it. 3 months later, Liam asked her to meet him at the same gallery. Emma arrived in a blue dress Jenny had helped her choose, laughing nervously because she thought it was another small exhibition. But inside, the room was empty except for one table, 2 cups of diner coffee, and her very first sketchbook resting beneath a glass case. The worn cover was bent at the corners. Pencil dust still lived along the spine. Beside it was a small brass plaque that read, "The beginning of the best mistake we ever made." Emma turned slowly. Liam stood behind her, no crowd, no cameras, no grand speech written by someone else. His eyes were bright, his voice low. "I fell in love with you before you knew my name," he said. "I fell in love with the way you saw people, the way you saw me when I was hiding in plain sight. I cannot promise a perfect life, Emma, but I can promise an honest one. I can promise that every door I open, I will open with you beside me." He reached into his coat pocket and took out a small velvet box. Emma's breath caught, but he did not move closer until she nodded. Then he knelt on one knee on the polished gallery floor, surrounded by the quiet proof of her dream. "Will you marry me?" For one heartbeat, Emma thought of the restaurant, the wrong table, the text from the real Kevin, the shame that had sent her running into the night. Then she thought of this room, the truth, the choice, and the man who had learned that love was not about rescuing her from her life. It was about respecting the life she was building. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "Yes." Liam stood, trembling as he placed the ring on her finger. It was simple, elegant, and warm against her skin. Months later, they married in a small garden outside the city, with Ginny crying in the front row and the diner staff cheering louder than anyone. No royal ballroom. No society performance. Just sunlight, wildflowers, honest vows, and a sketchbook on a small table near the aisle. During the reception, Emma opened it to the first blank page and drew 2 coffee cups, 1 diner booth, and a crooked little table number 7. Underneath she wrote 1 sentence. Sometimes the wrong seat brings you to the right life.